Okay, hello. Welcome to another Zoom group. We're going to start off with the meditation. So if you don't want to do the meditation, you're watching the video, just skip forward about 15 or 20 minutes. If you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the show notes. You can just click on it and it'll just jump forward. But do, participate. It's a nice meditation. It's a nice way of connecting. And if you haven't done it before, it's a way of expanding the communication that's happening at the moment, because whether you're at the Zoom group here or you're watching the video, you will be wherever you are. You'll have your eyes open. You'll be in a room maybe, and you'll be you'll have a little device of one kind or another, laptop, phone, or whatever, and that'll be the communication. My little head on the little screen and my voice in your ears. So the idea of the meditation is to expand that and to include other aspects of that communication that are going on. So when I start to meditate, I don't like to get into a special meditative position. I like to just close my eyes and immediately become aware of how I'm actually sitting. I find it helps me more. I get more out of it. If I get all organized and get into, oh, this is I'm doing meditation now, I better change the way I'm sitting, then I miss out on the opportunity to actually take a little snapshot of how I am, how I'm sitting, how comfortable I am in my body. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying that's what I do. So if you want to close your eyes, and as soon as I close my eyes, whatever part of my body is not comfortable will generally let me know. Now, if you're new to meditation, you may need to scan your body up and down very slowly, very gently. And the point of doing that, if you're new to meditation, is mostly to do with focus, because if you're not used to meditating, it's easy to be unconscious of your body. So having a system of scanning your body very slowly just helps focus your attention, and it helps you pick up different things. But if you're used to meditation and you are reasonably conscious of your body and in tune with your body, as soon as you close your eyes and you're holding the intention that you want your body to let you know what bits are uncomfortable, the most uncomfortable bit will grab your attention. Well, that's the way it works with me anyway. So I'll just draw your attention to a couple of different places that it is easy for attention to accumulate. And these are it's a combination of my body and then also from working with people. I've seen this as well. So if you bring your attention to your shoulders, it's surprising how much tension can be in your shoulders. And shoulders are one of the places where you can use this. You can breathe the tension away for sure, but you can sort of accelerate that if you bunch your shoulders up, tighten them up, and then drop them. That can save you a lot of breathing, and it just immediately kind of shakes away a bit of tension. So shoulders and the back of your shoulders, between your shoulder blades, your spine, that's an area that can be quite tense or can hold tension. So like with all meditation, you can breathe it away, and breathing, using your breath to get rid of tension, is a great way to just really help your breathing. And when you're breathing in meditation, it's always good to have a background kind of intention of breathing out for a little bit longer than you breathe in. So making your exhalation a little bit longer than your inhalation. I mean, that's just a good thing to do generally, but particularly in meditation. So then moving up from your shoulders and shoulder girdle, you can move up into your neck. Now, your neck can hold a lot of tension. So just being aware of it, and one of the ways you can sort of become more aware of it is to just gently let your head move. You don't have to, do full side to side or anything like that. But if you just let your head move, it will kind of alert you to, oh yeah, there's a bit back there. And if you go this way, oh, there's a bit over there, and so on. It just helps illuminate any tension you got there. And if you put your attention in your eyes, always looking, even when our eyes are closed, we're still looking. So a way you can kind of highlight and ease and become aware of different bits of tension is to just, with your eyes closed, if you just sort of sway your head from side to side, it doesn't have to be big, just a little bit, and you can start to feel the different muscles. You've got four muscles. Well, you got 6 muscles altogether, but you've got 4 obvious ones, up, down, left to right, on either side of each eyeball. And then you got 2 oblique muscles on top and bottom, and they sort of rotate your eyeballs. If you turn your head from one side to the other, your eyeballs will swivel. So yeah, just gently moving your head, and keeping your eyeballs fixed, you can sort of feel the tension, and you can sort of ease it out. Same again, you can breathe, you can hold the intention of helping those little muscles ease. And then it's a bit harder to feel. I find it a bit harder to feel as well, but there's rings of muscles inside your eyeball as well, towards the front of your eyeball, to do with lens accommodation, the ciliary muscles around your lens. You could think of your lens a little bit like a trampoline, and the ciliary muscles are like the springs around the edge of a circular trampoline. They tighten and loosen the trampoline for focus. And then you got the muscles that move your open and close your iris as well. So there's a finer quality to them, certainly for me anyway. But you can breathe some ease into them, help them be a bit easier. And so if you bring your attention to your spine now, whole length of your spine. And one thing my spine loves, and I think most people's do, is to elongate. Not in a ramrod kind of way, not in a forced way. A nice way to think of it is that your head is floating like a balloon. It's floating higher and higher, and it sort of drags your whole spine upwards and just naturally becomes straighter. So you can think of your spine unfurling. It doesn't have to be straight. I mean, there are natural curves in your spine that give it its shock absorbing abilities, but particularly with devices and computers and just work in general and age, it's quite easy for your head to start traveling forward and for you to hunch a little bit. So thinking of your head coming back onto your shoulders and heading up towards the ceiling, you can think of a string being tied from the top of your head up to the ceiling and being gently pulled up. That's another version of the same thing. So if you bring your attention to your abdomen now, starting off at your respiratory diaphragm, the top of your abdomen, you can feel it moving as you're breathing in and out. Your abdomen has many infoldings, many fascial infoldings in your abdomen. So there's a lot there to let go. So it often feels to me like with my abdomen that it's a case of let go, and then I let go, and like, oh, that's great, and then and let go, like, oh, okay, there was more. I didn't realize there was more, and then let go, like, oh, there's even more, and just continually letting go, letting your belly flop out. And you can include your spine in that as well, because the more your spine elongates, the more it kind of highlights, it can highlight holdings in your abdomen. And then all the way down, keep going down into your pelvic floor. Pelvic floor is an area that can be a bit numb or a little bit hard to get a sense of initially. So much like your shoulders, if you draw up your pelvic floor on the inside, immediately it'll kind of come to life, and it'll let you know what tensions there are there. But there can be a lot, because tensions in your pelvic floor would have started with toilet training, because for most people, toilet training was quite traumatic. It's not natural. If you have a pet, you'll know what I'm talking about. That's what we want to be like. We want to be like our pets, but we're civilized, in quotes. So there can be a lot of tension in the pelvic floor, for lots of different reasons, for everything from toilet training up to sexual encounters, and it's a place that we can tuck things, tuck trauma. So yeah, it's a vulnerable kind of area. So it's a funny kind of area. It wants to relax, but then you also have kind of a lot of conditioning telling you not to relax, or you'll have an accident. So it's often feels to me like sitting with somebody who's a little bit traumatized, and you're not trying to get them to do anything. You're just being with them. I find that's the most helpful way of dealing with my pelvic floor. And when I do that, I'm not trying to get it to relax or do anything like that. It does relax, ironically. So if you bring your attention to your hands now, the sensation in your hands, and if you've had your hands clasped or, holding each other, if you just separate them, you can put them on your thighs if you want, but you don't have to. And I just want you to get a sort of a snapshot of what the sensation in your hands is like. And we've had our eyes closed for a while now. We've kind of pulled back from the world of where the world is when our eyes are open. So we're kind of going backwards into ourselves. We're withdrawing a little bit. It's still there. If you opened your eyes, you'd see it. It's still there. The room, the device, and all that. But you've come into the sensation in your body a lot more. You've become more aware of it. So as you focus your attention into the sensation in your hands, if you let go of the idea of what shape your hands are and just go with the sensation, because for me, the sensation is different. The front of my hands feels much bigger in comparison to the back of my hands. I'm not saying that's the way it should be for you, but to let go of the idea of what the shape of your hands is, just go with the sensation. And take a good snapshot of what that sensation feels like and get a good reference for it. Because we're going to use it now in a minute to communicate. Well, we're not going to use it to communicate. We're going to use it as a way of seeing the communication. So holding that reference now, if you want to put your hands out on either side of you, and if you just hold the intention that you'd like to connect with, we'll start off with me. Now, you may have to make a little arrangement with your mind where if your mind kind of goes, hang on, how could we connect? Like he's in Ireland and I'm in whatever country I am. Behind the scenes, which is where we are now, space and time operate differently. So space-wise, it doesn't matter. You can connect with me. And how you'll feel that is if you take that reference that you had of your hands, the sensation in your hands, and you just are available to feeling a connection with me. We start off with me. We'll connect with more people in it. We'll just start off with me, though. And if you're watching the video, you can do this as well. Because as I say, space and time operate differently. You can connect with me this way. And how you'll feel it is, you'll feel a sense of, yeah, there's the sensation in my hands. And then here's something else. There's some other thing there that wasn't there before. When I had my hands down on my thighs, that wasn't there. There wasn't a thing there. That'll be me. And once you've got a good sense of me, or not, you know, it's all right if you don't feel it. See if you can include the other people in the group. And just again, you know, we're behind the scenes. The rules don't apply. You don't have to have them in a circle or anything like that. You can connect with everyone in the group without having to, you know, put them in a circle, or they're not like in their bodies in the same way as they are when you have your eyes open. And you can do this if you're watching the video as well. So as I said, behind the scenes, space and time operate differently. So if you're watching the video, you can connect with everyone who's going to watch the video after you. Same if you're in the group, you can connect with all the people who are going to watch the video. You can be there for them, and they'll be there for you. Similarly, if you're watching the video, you can connect with all the people who've watched the video before you. Because, as I say, space and time operate differently. And if your mind is having trouble with that, just make an arrangement. You can have a good think about it afterwards. But just for now, you just want to let yourself feel this, whatever sensation you feel. And if you do feel that connection, brilliant. If you don't, that's fine as well. The more times you try to do this, if you can't feel anything, the more times you do this in your meditation, eventually you'll start to feel it. So now we've kind of brought in a lot more depth into the communication. We've still got what's going on in the room. The room's still there, don't worry. It hasn't gone anywhere. You're still in that room. But now you're also included all this depth of communication that goes on behind the scenes. Because when people have realizations, whether it's on a 40-day fast or some ayahuasca shamanistic trip or some LSD trip or whatever, and they go, wow, I realized that we're all connected. You know, I looked into the eyes of this person and there was no difference between me and them. Or I looked at a tree and the tree was me and I was the tree, or I saw a bird and the bird was me, and I was the bird, or I looked at the ocean and the ocean looked back. Where they feel that is here behind the scenes, where you are right now. They didn't merge with the tree. They didn't merge with the bird or the person. Not in the eyes open world. It all happened behind the scenes where you are now. that's where this connection is registered. That's where this knowledge of that we're all one exists. And that's why I can say, you know, time and space operate differently here, because it does. And the thing is, you're never alone, not in the way that alone is talked about. You know, alone, loneliness. There's always something to connect to. There are always friendly energies to connect to behind the scenes. There's always people you can connect to behind the scenes. So we're going to finish the meditation in a minute. If you're newish to meditation, it can often feel like you've gone somewhere, like you've gone deeply inside. So if you have that feeling, then don't just open your eyes. Take a little while to come back from wherever it feels like you've gone before you open your eyes. If you're more familiar with meditation, then that feeling of going somewhere is just that. It's just a feeling. It's a combination of bodily sensation, your nervous system switching over to your parasympathetic division, and settling. That all creates a feeling of travel. But really, you haven't gone anywhere. Where you are is completely accessible every moment of the day. You don't have to. Meditation is a way of bringing it to your attention, but it's not a journey. So that's available to you all the time. So if you want, you can begin to, you know, include that reality by, you know, when you're meditating, you just open your eyes. Now you'll find as soon as you open your eyes that there'll be a big outpouring. You'll be sucked out into the eyes open world. So if you find you lose the inner state when you do that, you can just close your eyes again, reconnect with it. Oh, yeah, there it is. Then open your eyes again. No, lost it again. Close your eyes again, and so on, back and forth, until you feel like, yeah, I can hold this inner state. I'm very deeply, I'm exactly where I was when I was meditating, and I've got my eyes open. And the more you practice that, the more familiar you'll become with it, so that you can go about your day connected to that and aware of that deep stillness inside you, and be talking to your neighbor and be going about your business and so on. Okay, so if you skipped forward in the video, hello again and welcome. As I say at the beginning of all these Zoom groups, the time of the guru is over, the time of the spiritual teacher is over. We are all our spiritual teachers, if you like. We're all helping each other. We're all helping each other home, as Ram Dass said very beautifully. So with that in mind, my work and my role here is to facilitate the group, for sure. I've had lots of experiences. I'm happy to share them. But nothing that I say is from a place of, now this is the truth and I'm going to tell you. And as I said, those days are gone, you know. We all have to figure it out. We're all figuring it out. So I'm just sharing my perspective. I'm not teaching or anything like that, because as I say, that those days are over. So I like to talk about what is on the mind of the people in the Zoom group, rather than, you know, I mean, I've had some people write to me with different questions and stuff. I'll get to them, but I like to start off with what's going on for the people in the group. So anybody have anything they want to share, or a question or anything like that? Okay, so somebody has written and said, I'm feeling like overwhelmed and sad, and I first thought it was the pandemic, or I could be also homesick, or probably it is the capitalism, and that I want to spend most of my time doing things that I love, and many times that's not paid. Then I remembered I'll be 33 next month, and maybe, you know, if there's something with that age. So could we talk about aging, and also how to conciliate an artist's life with being a responsible adult in this system that we created. Well, there is a thing with 33, actually. Like, I got enlightened when I was 33, and I think Jesus was 33, and it's a common thing. It is a, for, I don't know why, but it is a pivotal age, and it is an age where people go through a lot of spiritual stuff. So yeah, it's no accident that you are feeling the pressure of that age. As I say, I don't know why that is, but I've seen it in myself and other people, and I know of other people who've said it to me. Yeah, the 33, it's a thing. I mean, I'm sure astrologically they'd have a field day with that, but yeah, it is, and it seems to be profound and spiritual, and it's not even in one of those Saturn returns. I think Saturn returns are every 7 years, so it's even out of sync with one of those 7-year and 14-year cycles. So yeah, I don't know what it is about 33, but yeah, it is. It's pretty powerful. Aging generally. Well, like, I'm not sure. Is it aging? I wonder, is it aging in relation to being a responsible adult? Because that's a very interesting idea, being a responsible adult, because immediately, as soon as I read that, I thought, particularly when it said being a responsible adult in this system that we created, immediately I read that the Krishnamurti quote popped into my mind. You see this bouncing around the internet a lot. It's very, I think it's a good quote. It's what he said was, "It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." So I think that's, to me, that's yeah, that's kind of what it's about. I think the idea, I talked about being an adult last week, about, that nobody ever tells you you're an adult, and that we've no rite of passage for it. So if that's the case, it's hard to kind of know, am I an adult, particularly if you're interested in for this kind of work and spirituality and further emergence. You can feel, I mean, I spent a lot of my life feeling, and I still have a part of me that does feel quite not an adult, or like that I'm not taking things seriously. Which now at this stage I'm consciously not taking things seriously, because I mean, it's a harsh way Krishnamurti described it, as a sick society, but it is, unfortunately, it is very sick. But it's got the veneer of consensus, and, well, this is what we do, this is what everyone's doing, so of course, but I mean, like, if you look around everywhere, it's crazy, and not good and not loving, everything from people starving to destruction of nature, to being out of sync with nature, to greed, to wars, and all sorts of things. It's very obviously, we've organized things in not in a way that's not as loving as it could be. Now, that's not to say we haven't improved. We've improved hugely, and every year it gets better. Contrary to what the news might like you to believe, every year things get better. There's less child mortality, there's less poverty, there's less, even with the widening gap between rich and poor, even with that, still things are getting better, generally speaking, even with the pandemic. Because the pandemic is, well, I'm not going to get sidetracked into the pandemic, but it's part of things getting better, because it's a natural response from nature to kind of go, no, you can, there's no, you're taking too long. You've got to speed up. You've got to fix this stuff sooner. So then if you kind of go, yeah, well, okay, so it's a crazy system. It's not particularly loving. It's not magic. It's got no appreciation of magic and no reverence for magic. Then how do I function? And the thing is, now I could have led a charmed life. That's always a possibility, but I don't think I did. Um, and somebody told me this years ago, and I think it's very helpful for me. And we were talking about something to do with, I don't know, accommodation or something like that. And we were talking it from the perspective of the spiritual life. And I think I was complaining about something. And they said, well, look, when you live the spiritual life, you'll always have a roof over your head and you'll always have food to eat. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds good. And then they added this caveat, which was you mightn't like the roof and you mightn't like the food, but you'll always have it. And I suppose that kind of speaks a little bit to the Buddhist, the way the Buddhist monks, they have to go out and beg. No, I'm not saying you should have to go and beg or anything like that, but there's a kind of an acceptance of, I'm operating on a different thing here, okay? Now, for me, it's always been easy because I'm so grateful I've always had this perspective, but I don't know when I had it, but it's right back into school, like when I was in school, was this thing of like, to be successful in life, you have to accumulate wealth, get a house, get married, get this car, then get a better car, and so on, and accumulate. And the people who are really successful in life have the most stuff. It's like that joke about, who dies with the most stuff wins. To me, that always seemed crazy because it was like, well, what's the point of getting all that stuff? Like you can't take that with you. On the off chance that you do actually go somewhere when you die, you're not going to be able to bring your Rolls Royce or your fancy house or your car. It all disappears. So very early on, it was like, well, there's no value in that to me. It's all, you don't own anything. You just have use of it for a little while. Even if you buy a house and land and all that kind of stuff, and this is my land, it's like, no, it's not. I just never bought it. I just never bought into that. I just always thought it was crazy. I mean, it's nice to have stuff, nice things, and I like nice things, but I'm not like attached to them. And I don't think, I mean, it's very hard for me to feel like I own things. I have to work at it, like it's very hard for me to go, that's my car, I kind of go, that's the car I'm using in my head. That's the way I think of it. Like, that's the car I'm using. And I'm great. I'm really grateful that I have that car, then I can use it. But I find it hard to kind of get all worked up about, that's my property. And, I just never really bought that whole thing. So for me, it was like, well, I'm really only interested in the sort of things that I possibly could take with me. That's kind of where it started. And then the more I got into the spiritual kind of life, so it was never that, I was never that interested in it. So like, I've never been wealthy by any stretch, but I've never been poor either. I've never been in poverty. I've been broke, and I've been bankrupt, and I've had like all sorts of difficulties financially, but it's always been kind of in the middle, I've always had like I think there's a very deep sense of humor running through my life. Not my sense of humor, but just like I often think, when people would go and join with Osho, who back when he was, he only changed his name to Osho not long before he died. Previous to that, he was Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. And there's a great documentary about him on Netflix. I think it's called The Wild Country. It's good. It's a good watch. And I knew people who were sannyasins of his, Irish people and other people. And one of the things you had to do when you went and became a sannyasin is like a disciple. A sannyasin is an Indian word. It's not just exclusive to Osho. But when you had to become a sannyasin, you had to give them all your money, right? And I can remember, I was never drawn to become a sannyasin or anything like that, but it was a period of time when I had a lot of them around me. So I knew a bit about it. And there was a period of time where I was going through pretty intense further emergence and spiritual growth. And at that time, I ran into pretty intense financial. I was working in the animation industry at the time, and the company I worked for went into liquidation, owing everybody quite a lot of money, me included, like months. So I went into a situation where my car was repossessed. I was pretty much kicked out of where I had to move from where I was living. And I look back at it now and kind of going, well, other people went and, you know, voluntarily gave all their money to their master. You know, I had everything repossessed, you know, which that's what I mean about a deep life, my life having a kind of deep sense of humor, you know. So it can happen, you know. Now, as I say, I've been lucky, and I'm very grateful that I feel like I've been taken care of. You know, I mean, there was times when, you know, I was very worried about money, and because I approached that from a spiritual perspective, you know, I got to deal with worry. You know, I wasn't too much worried about the money. I was like, wow, this is driving me nuts. I'm just, you know, I can't sleep at night. I'm so worried about this, what's going to happen next and where the next, you know, bit of money is going to come from, you know? So rather than worry, thinking about the money, I was looking at worry. And when I look back on my life, I've only had a few jobs that I hated. You know, I've managed to go from one thing to another, and do things that didn't make sense, and they seem to work out. Like you know, as I say, I used to work in the animation industry, and I mean, that was pretty much like a factory job, 9 to 5, and, you know, but after that, I pretty much went freelance, and then I went into being a therapist, which is the same. So you're kind of working for yourself. So to go from being in animation to being a therapist, that's a like a lunatic career move. You know, who does that? You know, but I managed to do it, and again, because it came from up inside me, and I just sort of followed it. It worked out. It might not have worked out, but it did work out. And being a therapist and working for yourself is very precarious, you know, because it goes up and down, and, you know, you're involved with other people and relying on other people to show up and pay, and, you know, but you're also in a caring profession. So people come and they can't pay, or they're, you know, they haven't got financial resources, and, you know, some therapists are very hard-nosed about that. Like, I could never be. I was always like, okay, fine, we'll work something out. And I don't like being in debt, so I don't have anybody indebted to me either. So it was never a case of like, well, you can pay me back kind of thing, you know. The only time that happened was when people insisted on it. They just couldn't stand it, you know. But so, yeah, precarious, but it all kind of worked out, you know. So when this person's asking about how to be a responsible adult, I think the key word there for me is responsible, and the key part of that word is response. You know, is to respond to life, because if you're drawn to things, to do things, I would just do them. You know, and like, I will pass on that advice to you of. You always have a roof over your head, and you'll always have food. You might like the roof and you might like the food, but you'll always be taken care of if you do that. And I don't mean that in a do what you love and the money will follow thing. That I tried that, and that did not work for me, and I don't know anyone that it did work for. And I feel like, and I got into a lot of trouble with that idea as well, because this, you know, it's like, it's like The Secret, you know, it's like that thing of The Secret. The Secret is a beautiful idea, but it's a real recipe for giving yourself a hard time. And I spoke a bit about this in Man Noise as well, you know. I used Nelson Mandela as an example. It's like, the idea of The Secret is, if you want it enough and you ask the universe enough, you'll get it. You can just create whatever you want. You can manifest whatever you want. Which, as an aside, is quite willful, you know. It's like, maybe life has got knows things better than you do. Maybe, you know, maybe there's a reason, you know? Anyway, so it's like, if you take that to the extreme, it's like, well, Nelson Mandela was in prison for 26 years, right, in Robben Island. So if he had known about the secret, like, well, number one, why was he in jail for that long? Was that because he didn't know about the secret? He didn't know about the law of attraction, and he just, you know, and if he had, he would have been able to get out of jail sooner. No. Well, okay, let's say he did know about it. Does that mean like he was just really bad at visualization and really bad at affirmations and really bad at the secret, and that's why he didn't get out of jail? It's like, no. It's just like it's not taking in the full sweep of life, and it's not being surrendered to life. It's going, no, I want this thing, you know, it's my goal and whatever. Now, some people are brilliant at that. They can just do that and they manifest it. And that's lovely to see, and it's great. But the thing is, if they then go on to go, now, look, everyone can do this. And I'm going to write a couple of books about it and videos. And if you don't do it this way, then you're doing it wrong, you know? It's like the trap of success, you know? It is a real trap, I think, of when you do something and it works out, immediately you jump to the conclusion that the way that you did it is what caused it to happen, which in my experience is not true. It's like, that's life. Life wanted that to happen, right? It was a bit to do with what you did, and it was what you did in your life, and then it happened. But that doesn't mean that the things that you did made it happen. You know, there's no humility in that. It's like, I understand why people do it, because they naturally want to share and they want to go, oh, I did this thing and this great thing happened. And, you know, you too can have this if you put your mind to it, kind of thing. But it's so easy to get into certainty and like, no, this is actually the way you do it, you know, because it's so different for each person. And that's why I'm saying this is just what I did, you know, and I have found this to be true. And I have had a lovely life so far, even with all the worries and stresses and different things to do with money and being a responsible adult. I think if you can respond to life and listen to life, and if you're moved to do something, then do it, you know? Like, I mean, I've been doing a podcast for the last 5 years. It doesn't make a penny, you know, it costs me money, but I love doing it. And great things have happened as a result of it. And at this stage, I don't really question it, you know? I don't really question why I do things. If I just move to do it, you know, like say with the further emergence stuff, I've talked about this already, you know, this in the middle of meditation, in the middle of last year or the early part of last year, it's like, yeah, you should do this live on Instagram. It's such a terrible idea, you know, but then the podcast is a terrible idea as well, because the podcast is about visual art, you know. So if it's always smile to myself, if I had to go to a bank and borrow money to start that podcast, I imagine the meeting I would have had. The bank manager would be going, and just let me get this straight. I just want to be sure I got this right. You want to do an audio only podcast about visual art and painting. Did I get that right? That's the stupidest idea I've ever heard, and yet like it's you know, quite successful. So I think that thing of, if you listen to yourself and you do it, and I think it's to be responsive, you know, to be willing to drop things. So if if you want to do things and it doesn't look like you're going to make any money from them, I wouldn't let that stop me. I'd fit them in, if you can, fit them into your day and start, and then see what happens. Take the next step, and don't be like rigid about, oh, this is my crusade and I have to do this thing. Just do the next thing, and life will open up to you if it's the right thing. Like I am pretty, particularly for things to do with other people, I'm very sensitive to the feedback, meaning I will listen for the feedback. I didn't always listen to the feedback. I would sort of plow ahead. I think I've spoken about open source cranio, this beautiful idea I had about 10 years ago to make craniopsychotherapy training available, because I had this to be all this training materials and stuff. I was like, wouldn't this be great in developing countries? You don't need any needles or medicine or anything. It's a hands-on thing. It would create employment. I could put it all online because there's a percentage of this teaching that is chalk and talk. You know, it's just information. So you could make videos of all that. It could all be online, and then you could have people who would act as mentors, and you could create all this local thing. And because there's a lot of trauma in developing countries, it's fantastic. What a brilliant idea. Well, I banged away at that for 7 years, right? Not listening to the feedback, because it was such a beautiful idea, and I was kind of in love with it. But the feedback from the craniosacral community was like deafening silence. No one else thought it was a good idea. So it took me 7 years. I mean, I had this like really complicated website with all my training stuff, and it was great. And, you know, deafening silence. So in the end, I was like, oh, okay. I think I might have mentioned this before, but I got to the point where it slowly started to dawn on me. There was no feedback for it. And I think I said, okay, the hosting is coming up for the website. I just did this as a tester. The hosting is coming up for the website. Would anyone like to help with that? I think it was only $100, nothing, not one email. So yeah, after that, I just let that idea go. So I think it's important to listen to the feedback, particularly if it relates to other people, you know, like you want to do it something as a service for other people. And if the other people are going, nah, no, thanks, we don't want that, then I'd move on to the next idea, you know. Okay, I hope I have answered that. Does anybody have anything they want to say or comment or talk about to do with that? Someone saying thank you. You're welcome. Okay, somebody else, yeah. Somebody else says, one question that keeps returning is the relationship between disassociation and attachment. It feels that the more I experience disassociation, the habitual response reaction is to over-attach to plan or outcome. Do you have any thoughts to share on this? So my understanding of disassociation is limited, I think, because disassociation is a psychological term, and it can, you know, I think there are degrees of it, and you can, you know, I don't want to sort of cross over into that territory, but from my understanding of what this person is talking about, it sounds like when things don't go your way, there can be a tendency to disassociate. And disassociation is, in this context, I think, a feeling of sort of removal. It can happen in trauma, which I do have quite a bit of experience of. Can happen in trauma quite a lot, where, and it's often why people don't remember trauma, is because it's too overwhelming, and particularly if it happens in childhood, but even as adults, if it's too overwhelming, as a fail-safe, it's almost like we shut down and we go somewhere else. Our consciousness goes somewhere else because we can't experience what's happening directly. And then part of the process of healing that, or I don't even like that word healing it, because I think integrating is probably a better way of thinking about it, is to slowly and gently begin to experience that, whatever the trauma was. So I think what this person's asking about is the combination of disassociation and attachment is, if I've got this right, they're talking about when things don't go the way that you want, the tendency in this person can be to go back to attaching to the plan of how they want the things to go in the first place. So you have a plan. Well, since we were talking about money earlier on, you have a plan of like, I'm going to save up and then I'm going to go on this holiday. And then something happens, like a pandemic, and you can't go on a holiday, and you don't have a job anymore. When the shock of that happens, there's an initial like, oh, this is too much, I can't deal with this. And then the flip of that, or when that switches over, is into, I'm going to make a new plan where I'm going to, you know, and then this plan, when this plan works, I'm going to be, you know, and I'm going to really, God, I hope this plan works now. You know, I have a feeling that's what it is. And both of which really require gentle handling, because when shocking things happen, they're shocking. I know that's obvious, but often I know I am like this as well. It's like, it's almost like there can be a momentum of, no, I'm not shocked. I'm going to hop over that, you know, shock, and I'm going to just keep busy and, you know, doing things, and, you know, it's all fine. Everything's fine. Yeah, everything's okay. You know, everything's great. Don't, you know, no, I don't want to think about that. So for me, I have to kind of go, that was a shock. It's like when my mother died. It's a good example. It's probably the most recent one. My mother died about 2 years ago. And for about 6 months, I knew I wasn't in my right mind, meaning I didn't make any big decisions. I didn't, I just kind of knew I wasn't the full shilling, as we say here in Ireland. I wasn't completely with it. I was just a bit out of it. And part of what consciously, I didn't register it. Consciously, I was like, no, I'm fine. You know, I mean, I was upset, and we went to the funeral, and I cried, and, you know, I cried deeply and all that kind of thing. But in the days afterwards, consciously, I was like, yeah, it's sad. And if I thought about my mother, I would get upset, and or you know, the way grief comes, it just comes in waves with no prompting. Just, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about day-to-day stuff. I didn't think I wasn't conscious of being different. It just was fine. But I knew I wasn't right in the head. So much so that I had to say to my wife, Maggie, and say, look, can you just keep an eye on me just for the next 6 months? Just, you know, just remind me if I suddenly go, that's it, I'm going to move to the Caribbean or whatever. I didn't say that, but you know, something is like that, you know, like I was doing slacklining. You know, I had a slackline thing out in the back garden. This is, if you don't know what slacklining is, it's like a tape, you know, the things that you see on trucks that where they're tightening down the truck, and it's got this kind of winch thing, and it's about this wide. Well, if you string it out between two things, like two trees, and you can walk on it like a tightrope, and it's great. It's really good for balance, which is a good thing to do as one gets older, is to help, you know, keep your balance going. And I had been doing this the previous year, you know, but after my mother died, I stopped doing it for 6 months, because I kind of knew I could injure myself. Okay, I knew it as an idea. I didn't feel it in my body. In my mind and my body, I was like, no, it's fine, I'll be grand. But I kind of knew, no, I could quite easily screw that up. And that's just a small example of ways that I just took care of myself during that time. So I think starting with the thing of, yeah, I'm possibly disassociating here. I'm possibly shocked, but don't really know I'm shocked, or I'm not really feeling the shock. You know, that sort of, it's helpful to kind of stand to one side and go, yeah, I think I am shocked. So I'm gonna take care of myself as if I am shocked. That's what I mean about gentle handling, and having a trusted ally in that is a real bonus. But then the other side of it, of like the reactive, like I'm going to make a new plan, and this plan is going to be, it's going to sort things out, and everything's going to be great. That's just the opposite of it, you know. I mean, the idea of, it's what, you know, I talked about this a lot last year, actually, when all the pandemic stuff started. It was about this, the illusion of certainty, which is a paradox, because on the one hand, there's no certainty. But then on the other hand, the frontal part of us likes it, likes to think there is certainty. And it's rather than getting into a fight of like, there is no certainty, yes, there is, I want, you know, to just allow both to have their thing. So the deeper parts of me know that, you know, anything could happen right now. You know, an airplane could drop out of the sky and land on me right now, and that'd be the end of this, this conversation. Okay, that's a possibility. life is completely uncertain, okay? But the frontal part of me just finds that terrifying. And it likes the idea of thinking about possible futures, and oh, everything is gonna keep going as it was and as it is, and if I make a plan, it'll work out. So I am able to hold both. I'm able to allow the frontal part of me to make plans and to look forward to things, and to get excited about going on holidays. And even though the deeper part of me knows, well, sure, there's no future. Like, the future doesn't exist. The holiday may or may not come. The morning may or may not come. The next moment may or may not come. I'm keenly aware of that. But it's, I suppose it's a little bit like having a child who believes in Santa Claus. It's, I mean, okay. If you tell the child about Santa Claus, of course, you're the person who told them in the first place. But just let's not say that. Let's say you're talking to somebody else's child, right? That's a better way. And they're going, I'm really excited about what Santa Claus is going to bring me for Christmas. You don't go, well, what, your parents are duping you? Your parents are telling you this lie about Santa Claus? Santa Claus doesn't exist. What's wrong with you, little person? You'd never say that. Of course you wouldn't. So that's kind of the way I relate to those parts of me. It's like the deeper part of me knows life's uncertain. And then the frontal part of me likes to plan things and get excited about things. And the deeper part is very loving and doesn't kind of go, hey, this is all. It only does that. It only does that if, like in this situation, when the plans blow up in the face, as they often do, and the frontal part of me is like, oh, what happened? And I'm in shock and it's terrible. Then the deeper part goes, oh, it's all right. Look, nothing's certain anyway, You never know what's around the corner. The next moment is full of possibilities, full of wonderful possibilities and terrifying possibilities. So it's all right. And it helps that part, So I think for me anyway, it's the thing of being able to hold both and to be loving with both parts of me and allow them to be there, Anybody have any questions or comments about that? All right, I've got one more thing. You don't mind hanging on. You can go if you like. Don't feel like you have to stay, but I've got one more thing I want to. Somebody sent in this thing saying, I don't know if you know about the allegory of the long spoons. I feel it's very inspiring for the times that we're living in. Yeah, I do know it. I've heard of it years ago. It's a lovely idea. If you don't know it, there's lots of different variations of it, but basically it's like someone goes to hell first and then they go to heaven. And in both places is a very similar situation. So we'll do hell first. So the person goes to hell. Now they could either visit hell or they're brought to hell or they're shown hell. It doesn't matter. So in hell, everyone's sitting at this big, huge banquet table, all right? Huge table loaded with food. Yet everybody sitting at the table is starving, okay? And they have these long spoons, and the spoons are so long that they can't get them into their mouth. And whatever way things are organized in hell, they can't hold the spoon up close to the, it's like if the spoon is this long, they can't hold it up close to the thing and eat that way. They have to hold it by the end. I mean, in some of the stories, their arms are made so they're straight. So basically, they can't get the spoon in their own mouth. So they've got all this food, and of course, my brain kind of goes, why don't they just face plant the food and eat it that way? Anyway, let's not get into that. In the rules of the little story, they can't get the food into their mouth with the spoons, right? So they're all starving. So that's hell. And then in heaven, it's exactly the same scene, big long table, loads of people on either side, and everybody's has eaten. They're all, they're not emaciated, not starving. They're all happy, full of lovely food. And what's happening, what the difference between what's happening in heaven and what's happening in hell is that the people up in heaven they'll take a bit of food in their long spoon and they'll feed the person opposite them the other side of the table, and the person on the other side of the table will, you know, eat the food, and then they will do the same for them. They'll give them the food. And in that way, they're happy and contented, and they get to share in the bounty of the table because they are feeding each other. And it's a lovely story. And it's a lovely idea. And it is there's something that we're all coming to consciousness about in one way or another at the moment, because what's happening at the moment is people in developing countries are feeding us, but we're not feeding them back. put it bluntly. Like there's another, I don't know whether it's a book or an article about how many slaves each person in the Western developed world have, which is kind of a shocking thing to say. What do you mean, how many slaves? But, you know, all the products that we have are built on the back of people who don't really want to make them, but are making them because they have to make them, whether that's child labor or all of the other terrible things. So it's a pretty cynical way of putting it, but it's a shocking way of putting it. And sometimes the shocks are good to kind of bring things into stark relief. So the people in the developing countries are reaching out with the spoons to feed us, but yeah, we're not doing it back yet. But that's changing. Changing, not fast enough, but it is changing, you know. That's why I have a Fairphone. I'm going to go off on a slight ad here for Fairphone. Not a paid endorsement, but Fairphone is a company in Amsterdam who make an ethical phone. It's called a Fairphone, and they go to great lengths to make sure that there is no child labor, and they have resourced their supply chains very vigorously. And the phone is relatively inexpensive. I think it's €400 for the phone. The phone is modular, meaning it's designed to last for 5 years at least, so that if, like, they've just come out, I bought mine last year, and they've just come out with a upgrade for the camera. So you can take out the camera module and replace it with the upgraded one. It's only like €50 or something like that. Or if you break your screen, which is, you know, everyone breaks their screen, you can just send off to the website and they'll send you a new screen, and you can put it in, you know, it all comes apart with little screws and stuff. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. Fairphone, highly recommend it. So while I think that story about the long spoons is beautiful, I would just add this, right, which is, in my experience, it can be very easy to be at the table and go, oh, friend, I will feed you. And, you know, you give the friend the food, and that's great. And then you're sitting there going, and the friend doesn't do anything. And you're like, you know, would you like to, you know, I just fed you, and then nothing's coming back across the table, and you're like, oh, you're like, well, this is shit. I'm starving, and that fucker is, you know, and then you're into the human world, because it's quite easy. Like, a lot of the beauty in that story is that the other person reciprocates, but in my experience, giving, you know, you have to really give, not expecting the person to feed you back. You know, I don't know why it works like that, but when you give, kind of going, well, I'm going to feed you, and you're going, what? Hey, you forgot to feed me. Then you're into unhappiness. So it seems to be that the challenge is to not feed the other person because they are going to feed you back, but to just feed the other person because you love them and that you're willing to starve anyway. You know, so you're in hell with a bunch of shits who don't want to give you any food, right? But you just go, hey, do you want some food? Fuck it, at least you can eat, you know. I think that's more, it's certainly been my experience. Like, to be just to want to give the person the food, because you can, because it's like, well, okay, I can't get this stupid spoon. Who made the rules here anyway? I can't get this stupid spoon into my face, so I can't feed myself, and I'm not allowed to face plant the food. And I'm not allowed to do anything, but I can see you're over there and I can give you some food. So regardless of whether you're going to give me any food back or not, or regardless of whether you get the whole, loving vibe here, I'm still going to offer you some food. So if you stay still, I'll put some food in your mouth. I think that is what life is like. Certainly what my experience of life is like. Not that people aren't lovely. Of course people are lovely, and most people, of course, will feed you back. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how it is inside me. That it's very important to be clear that I'm just doing this because I can. I watched Jojo Rabbit a little while ago, which is a great movie. It's such a beautiful movie. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. And it's about a little boy in Nazi Germany with his mother, and he's completely indoctrinated into the Hitler Youth. And it's a comedy, if you can believe that, and it actually is really funny. It's a masterpiece of treading the fine line between comedy and saying something really important and dealing with really difficult subject. Jojo Rabbit. But anyway, there's a kind of a running thing through the movie of like his mother, the little boy asks his mother about some person. What about that person? What are they doing? And she'd say, they're doing what they can. And then, it would come up about something else. And what are you doing? And she said, I'm doing what I can. So it's kind of that, like doing what you can. I can do this, so I'm going to do it. And I'm not doing it because I'm going to get something back. I'm just going to do it because I can. I think that's very personal to you and yourself when you're thinking about why you'd want to do something, why you'd want to feed that person on the other side. If you have anything in you at all about, well, I feed you and you feed me and it's all lovely, then that's probably not going to work out. It's weird that you have to just do it because you can and you don't expect anything back. Then all sorts of wonderful things can happen in my experience. Okay, anybody got anything on that or want to share anything? Somebody saying beautiful. Good, thank you. One else is saying lovely, thank you. Great. Okay, I think we will wrap it up there then if there's nothing else. Thanks very much for joining me for another Zoom group. It's always a pleasure. And yeah, see you next week for some more Zoom group further emergence fun and games.